Okay, this is part 3 of however many of these I decide to do. So today I want to talk about this thing called the Augmented Scale. And fair disclosure, if anybody's listening to that, that's impressions. It's the chord changes to impressions. Without a melody, a tune's not much of a. You can't copyright chord changes. So you know how that goes. It's the chord changes to impressions. It's just a minor chord that goes on for 16 bars, and it changes by half step. And I also wasn't even playing it in the original key. You'd normally play that thing in D. I was playing it in C. For those of you with perfect pitch, what was I going to say? The fair disclosure is also I was using major thirds over minor chords. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit and what that possibly implies. But let's just hop right into it. So we're on this theme of augmented scales, and every one of them is built off of a certain set of keys. I was actually thinking about this because I didn't really talk to you guys about actually playing the scales. So it'd be good to review them for sure. If we started with the diminished scale, which is the one that's kind of it's based in minor thirds of the diminished chord. You'd have to check out the first video in the series to really get all of the details about that. But remember, it's built in alternating whole steps and half steps, and you can actually play that starting on whole step or half step. It doesn't matter. I personally like them starting on half steps just because that's kind of the way that I learned it. But you can use them interchangeably if you want to. So the way I can do this real quick, for those of you guys who are actually following along, if anybody out in the universe of the internet is actually watching this and trying to do that, I'm going to play the one starting in my C and starting in half steps. So it's going to go C, C sharp, E flat, E natural, F sharp, G, A, B flat, C. And that would sound like this. And going down. Okay. The next one that we talked about is the whole tone scale, and that is the one that is built in all whole steps. That one's actually a little bit easier. So if I started in C, remember that one is only 6 notes long. it's built off of a bunch of augmented chords. It's whole step symmetrical, and they just go on infinitum, which is why there's only 6 notes, because by the time you get to 6 whole steps, you've reset to the starting note you started out with. Remember that these symmetrical scales are symmetrical because they have a tendency to kind of reset themselves every number of steps, right? The diminished scale resets on minor thirds. The whole tone scale happens to reset on whole steps. Okay? So if we just play whole steps all in a row, in this case, if I played in C, it'd be C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and C, or B flat and C. Some of the horn players likes thinking in flats. It's whatever you want to do. You know, I think string players maybe like sharps because of the way that strings are kind of built, like violin players, but however you think about it is fine. So I'm going to play that starting on C now. Okay, so we're going to start in C and just go up in whole steps, that's it. Okay. Remember that whole tone scales, there's only 2 of them, because once you go up a whole step in any given whole tone scale, it's the same scale. And the only way to change the set of notes is if you go up a half step, because if you're going to use all whole steps, you don't really have a lot of options to change the key of the scale other than half steps. So in any given whole tone scale, you got to go up a half step to switch to the other set. So the first set is that set of whole tones. So let's say that you're in C, okay? C whole tone is the same as D whole tone, which is the same as E whole tone. And you can just keep going up until you get to B flat whole tone. Same scale, just starts on a different note. To go up a half step, you get the other set of whole tone scales, and by doing that, you get the other 6 notes, and by doing that, you actually end up getting the full chromatic. So you kind of get all 12 keys. Remember that symmetrical scales have this ability to kind of encompass multiple keys in one scale. So the diminished scales, there are 3 of them, and each of them kind of encompasses 4 keys apiece. The whole tone scale, there's only 2 of them, and they encompass 6 keys apiece, and that is all 12 keys. So on this topic of 4 and 3, 2 and 6, remember what I said, that there's actually a symmetrical scale for each one of the divisions of 12. We covered the 3 scales of 4 keys each. We covered the 2 scales of 6 keys each. Right now, we're going to cover this new thing called the augmented scale. This one is 4 scales, and each of them actually cover 3 keys each. Okay? And it's built off of a different interval. The augmented scale is kind of a weird cousin of the diminished scale, I think, because a lot of its properties are very similar, except it uses a different but similar interval. The diminished scale is all minor thirds. The augmented scale is actually built off of all major thirds. So let me just play it right now in C so you can hear it, so you can see. Haha. Okay. Alright, so what do we got there? That one's new stuff, kind of weird. Augmented scale, let me just tell you the notes if you wanted to try it on your own. C, E flat, E, G, G sharp, B, and C. Alright, now, that scale is built off of 2 augmented triads, kind of like a whole tone scale. There's 2 augmented triads, but they're actually a minor third apart. Now, it's a little bit confusing, and actually, in thinking about this, it's been a while since I thought about this scale. I haven't really come up with the reason why it happens to be structured in minor thirds, or the reason that happens to be like that. I'm sure there is a reason, mathematically speaking. I just haven't, in my brain, wrapped around it all the way. But it's 2 augmented triads that are a minor third apart. If you stack them together, you get this 6-note scale that is built in a symmetrical set of minor third, half step, minor third, half step, minor third, half step. So check this out. C to E flat is minor third. Go up a half step to E. Go up a minor third to G. Go up a half step to G sharp. And go up a minor third to B from G sharp. And then half step. So, like the diminished scale, which is whole step, half step, whole step, half step, the augmented scale is minor third, half step, minor third, half step. Now you might be asking yourself, JU, can't you start it like the diminished scale if you just go half step, minor third, half step, minor third? Yes, you probably can. I don't play them that way because I haven't gotten that far yet in my practice of doing this. You guys are learning these scales along with me. I'm just trying to show you what I know so far. If I come up with more stuff, I'll put it on the internet, for free. But yes, technically, I suppose, like the property of the diminished scale, if you wanted to start it on a half step and then go minor thirds, you'd actually get another set of keys that you could possibly start with. So let's see if I can wrap my brain around this just for a real quick sec. The regular way is minor third, half step. So if you wanted to do half step minor third, you would then have to go start on the key a minor third up or minor third down. So what would happen is this. Yeah. So you could do that, and I'm sure that if you did it that way, speaking of application of the scale, there's another set of applications because of the set of notes that you happen to be hitting when you're doing that. But let's not get into that today. This video is already long enough as it is, so we'll just talk about the regular one for me, which is half step minor third. So I was talking about building it using augmented triads. It's an augmented triad on C. And if you go up a minor third from there, you cover an E flat augmented triad. And that is the construction of the two scales. Okay, or the one scale. It's built out of two chords, two augmented triads. Here's where this gets weird, though. Okay, so if you go up the augmented scale, if I went up to the second note, which is an E flat, you actually do get the half step minor third, but for a quick sec, we're not going to think about that, okay? We're going to go up a major third. Now, when you do that, it's just like the property of the previous scales that we talked about. Your set of intervals resets again. So we took just the first two intervals of the scale, which happen to be our symmetrical dyad, I call them, or pair of intervals, an intervallic dyad. You have half step minor third. Or minor third half step, sorry. If you start on E and you do the same process, you actually will, again, get a minor third and a half step. And if you keep going up, you will find that you are once again playing the exact same scale, just starting on a different starting note. Okay? The set of intervals doesn't change. You're just starting on a different note of the scale. So hence it retains the property of what we find in typical symmetrical scales. So for the purposes of practice, the C augmented scale is the same as the E augmented scale, which is the same as the G sharp augmented scale. Now again, we go up in half steps because that's kind of the easiest way to wrap your brain around this. You go up to that next scale, it's then C sharp, and go up in major thirds from there. So C sharp, F, and B flat are the same one. Or no, A, sorry, geez. C sharp, F, and A are the same augmented scale, use the same set of notes. D, F sharp, and B flat are the same set of augmented scale. Okay, those fit in that one. And then the last one, of course, is E, G, and B natural. E, G, B natural is the same augmented scale. Once you go up from there another half step, you've now hit E, okay? And that then again is the same as C. So it's the same retention kind of property as the other symmetrical scales. Once you reset to that next higher note where the interval actually clicks back into an interval that was in the original scale, you're now restarting the scale on a different starting note. Okay? So, C again. If we go up a major third from that and use the exact same set of intervals, which would be minor third, half step, minor third, half step, it's ends up being the same scale starting on E then. And then finally you can do it on G sharp. Okay. Now, if you're following along, I just named see, I can't even count now. 4 scales, because goodness gracious, the more you talk about this, and I'm trying to one-take this video so I don't have to clip stuff together, probably at the detriment to you listeners out there, because now you're just going to get a bunch of roundabout extra stuff, but that's okay. We're just, we're just talking knowledge, so whatever you get out of it, you get out of it, and what you don't, you go listen to somebody, I don't know, somebody else. But I named 4 scales, and each of the scales covers 3 keys. So that's why it's kind of a cousin of the diminished scale, because the diminished scale is 3 scales, which cover 4 keys each. That is all 12-year scales, your 12 major keys. The augmented scales, there's 4 scales, and each of those covers 3 keys each. So those ones also cover all 12 keys, using only 4 scales. Okay? So, well, this topic of playing with whole step or major thirds over minor chords, long story short, I heard Michael Brecker doing it, and so I started doing it. Long story short, number 2, if you were listening to what I was playing at the beginning of that, you might have heard some things that are kind of Brecker-ish, or maybe Coltrane, the middle, late Coltrane period, 1961, 1962. Fair disclosure, that's not what it was specifically. However, both Train and Brecker, because Brecker studied a lot of Train, did like using and studying the effects of the augmented scale. Not the scale, the augmented triad, and the implications of symmetrical chords, like the diminished or the augmented triad. There's a lot of academic study on this about how they played and how they use those scales. Some of it I like to get into, some of it I don't. Because jazz is meant to be listened to and, felt, not necessarily pieced together with, papers and essays and stuff, right? But you kind of need a little bit of both to really maybe try to dig into it. Sometimes older guys are like, well, if you can't hear it, then you shouldn't play it or whatever. Well, I was like, okay, yes, but also sometimes it's easier to just look the scale up, or okay, here's one. You're supposed to transcribe. Everybody transcribe. But I have plenty of transcription books back there, because sometimes if I'm trying to figure something out, yes, transcribing it is good, great, necessary, imperative, and important. But sometimes I don't have enough hours in the day, I'm a teacher, and I play occasionally, with different groups, but also, I do a lot of stuff with composing and writing music for the kids. So, yeah, I'm kind of making excuses as to why I don't really transcribe, but I will say that sometimes it's nice to be able to look something up that's already pre-written out, so that if you wanted to figure out what's going on, you could kind of look it up. Do you learn it as well? Probably not. In fact, I would say, definitely not. However, it is a nice time-saving thing when it comes down to it, okay? So, going back to what I was originally saying, I heard Brecker doing these major thirds over minor scales, and in fact stacking these augmented kind of sounds, and Train was kind of doing the same thing. In fact, Train did have some symmetrical systems that seemed like to have semblance of the augmented scale. Now, I won't say that he was playing the augmented scale, but he was very interested in the augmented triad and stacking major thirds. Hint, hint, giant steps. Go look at giant steps. Go look at Lazy Bird. Go look at Moment's Notice. There's this fascination with minor and major thirds that Train was utilizing in the late 50s and early 60s. So there's kind of a history to doing this, which is why when you play things like this, you kind of sound like Brecker / Train, because those are sort of augmented triads. Same thing if I was doing, if I did a line. Train Brecker-esque. I'm not a Train or Brecker scholar, so nobody think that I was trying to imitate those guys, because not nearly that good. But some of those shapes are very similar. It's just kind of it's an interesting way to diversify your playing. So I just told you a little bit about how to use it, actually, kind of roundaboutness wise, but that's not what this video is for. So just the augmented scale and how it's built. It happens to be this system that uses 3 keys per scale built in this augmented triad. Okay, so let me play it one more time, and then maybe I'll just finish this video playing some more shapes. Okay, and then kind of a little bit of how to use it. Major thirds over minor triads. Here we go. So hopefully you got something out of that. I'm not the best at explaining stuff sometimes.